fellow clinicians, this is Nasseh coming to you here from Boston Common on my way from work to home. We've had an early day, as you can imagine. The reason is because of this crazy snowstorm that's going on here in the northeast area. But I wanted to, on the way home in this familiar road that is now taken over by snow, to kind of share with you a case that I did a couple of months ago, and I just saw the patient back for a 2-month follow-up today. This patient was so motivated, he showed up even in this kind of weather. Anyway, so this was a case of a pulp cap, of a indirect pulp cap, and I know that a lot of you guys have been interested in hearing more about indirect pulp caps, so I figured that I'm going to use this opportunity on my way home to talk to you about this particular case of a maxillary premolar. Now, this tooth was originally referred for root canal therapy. As you can see, there is some decay on the distal area of the tooth, and there is an old restoration, an old amalgam restoration with the secondary decay in the interproximal area. Usually in cases like this, the main question of whether root canal therapy should be done or not is a combination of factors, one of which is, first of all, the pre-operative diagnosis. And in this tooth, the patient's chief complaint was thermal sensitivity. However, the thermal sensitivity was not lingering. And my clinical tests showed that the lingering application of the endo ice to the tooth didn't really last more than a few seconds, and nor was there any lingering effect or turning into spontaneous pain historically, or any throbbing involved with this tooth. So as a result, the discussion was then changed from the question of doing root canal therapy to whether we can do some kind of indirect pulp cap and preserve the pulp without doing root canal therapy. Now, this patient was motivated to do that. Financially, doing a root canal and a crown was not necessarily something that he had planned for. And so what we decided to do, and especially because of the anatomy of the tooth, because if you look at the preoperative radiograph here, you will see radiographically the apices of this tooth appear fairly abnormal, and that there is, in fact, an additional root for this maxillary premolar. So from the radiograph, I can ascertain that there are 3 roots present. And where there's 3 roots present on a maxillary premolar, you know, obviously this is a fairly advanced case. And while doing root canal therapy with 3-rooted premolars isn't necessarily too difficult in the maxillary arch, you know, if there is a way that we can avoid it, that's obviously best both for the patient as well as for the operator. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to do the pulp capping as opposed to just go ahead and do the root canal. And basically what we decided to do here was to go ahead and remove all the decay first. And as we approach the pulp, kind of be a little bit more careful. It's very important to kind of remove the decay from outside in. Use a high-speed handpiece. Have a fairly, steady hand. Be very careful. Do not rush. And do a gentle brushing action. Make sure you use a lot of water because the pulp has to stay cool. And then, as you get closer to the pulp, you may want to move to a slow speed, number 4 or number 6 round burr, but still be very careful, because even if you're going to go with a slow speed, I would recommend that you at least have 40,000 RPM on your handpiece, because lower speed handpieces create a lot of torque, and at this point creating torque can potentially heat up the pulp and also traumatize the pulp. So that's why it's important not to use low speed, which also doesn't use water most of the time, because that will all add into cooking the pulp. And the key here is to preserve the pulp while you're doing an indirect or even a direct pulp cap to the extent possible. So here we removed all the decay and got close to the area where you can now finally see, due to discoloration, the secondary dentin or the reparative dentin that was originally laid down due to the proximity of the decay in this tooth. And Then proceeded to disinfect the surfaces. You could use hypochlorite, a weak solution of 2% hypochlorite or chlorhexidine, whichever one you prefer, to disinfect the surfaces and confirm that you don't have any exposure. And at this point, what you would need to do is you need to put a little drop of the RRM syringeable on this area. You could also use the fast set putty. I've just found that the RRM syringeable is a little bit faster to apply to the area. Of course, this material will take 4 hours to set, and therefore what you would need to do is you need to cover it. And the coverage of a fresh bioceramic can be done with either other bioceramic formulations, or you could even use the glass ionomer. But you have to be kind of careful when you're placing the glass ionomer so that you don't end up squeezing out all of the bioceramic. I recommend that you place it gently, just, you know, gingival to the area where you place the bioceramic, and then slowly add around it without dislodging the bioceramic droplet that you have added. So that's basically it. And then you fill up the whole thing with the glass ionomer, or as I said, the bioceramic based material, and then you fill it up all the way to the top. Now the goal at this point is to wait a couple of months. So don't do anything as long as you have the filling material. As you can wait for 2 months, and then after the 2 months you can confirm, have the patient back for confirmation, and if there are no symptoms and if everything has healed, then you are ready to actually restore the tooth. And then at that point what you need to do is you need to use the glass ionomer as a base and then prepare into it and place a composite. So just prep right into the glass ionomer. In this case I had used the Fuji 9 material, and that basically is all you need to do, is to use that material as base for your composite restoration. And that's pretty much it. So that's the technique for doing your indirect pulp caps using a bioceramic. The number one key is diagnosis, as I've mentioned before. And then after that, the only thing to do is the technique that has to be very gentle to the pulp, you know, and then get a fairly good seal so that you can make sure there's no leakage afterwards and that the case will fare well. Obviously, the key here is also communication with the patient, that this is an attempt to avoid the root canal. But I can tell you, with proper diagnosis, and so far, all the cases that I have done, I have been able to avoid a root canal. And this patient was back for 2 months, and everything looked great, and was then urged to go see his referring dentist for a follow-up and the restoration. Of course, especially in these maxillary premolars where there's a buccal and lingual cusp that end up getting thinned out, if there's not enough confidence for placing a composite bonded material, the dentist can proceed to have some cuspal coverage in the shape of a crown or some kind of a onlay, or either way, some cuspal coverage to get protection from cuspal deflection. Anyway, the root canal procedure and the pulp capping may have been a lot easier than walking around in this weather and explaining the procedure, but I'm getting home, I'm getting pretty close to home, so I'm gonna let you guys go, and I hope your days wherever you are warmer, and I will see you in the next video tutorial. Leave your comments below here. Remember that I only answer questions at our own website at realdental.com, and I see you in the next video. In the meantime, let's save some teeth.